So right now our login form seems to work really well, and the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of these two lines in login.view. And of course these are the lines that display the email as we type it in, just so we can make sure that the V model is working, and we don't need those anymore. So I'll get rid of that. Now let's go back and have a look at our login screen and see how we can improve things. Right now, if we look at the page like this, in other words, without the JavaScript console open, if I put the wrong information in meathere.com password, and that user doesn't exist, and I click login, it just does that. It says, well, you entered correct information or valid information in both of the text inputs, but there's no feedback that actually tells the user that something has gone wrong. In the same way, if I put the correct information in, say you@there.com with password, I do get a little tiny bit of visual feedback. I'll click login, and the login turned to log out up here. But again, people aren't going to notice that. So to make this a little more user-friendly, let's make some improvements. So I'll go back to my IDE, and the first thing we'll do is scroll down here. When somebody successfully logs in, we get this part right here. Okay, so we're storing the token in our JavaScript store. Let's do a redirect to take them to the home page, and at least that way they know that something has happened. So to do that, we need to come back up here to the import part, and we need to import the router. And of course, that's as easy as going import router from, and it's stored from the current directory up one level in router, and it's called index.js. Okay? So we have router used here now, or imported here. That means we can use it down here. And to redirect using the router, to do what's called a programmatic redirect, it's remarkably easy. All we have to do is use that router we just imported, call the method push, and go to some URL. And we're just going to go to the home page. That will do the trick. So with that, if I come now back to my browser and click home to make sure we're current, we're not logged in. So I'm on the login screen, and I'll put in valid login credentials, you@there.com and password. And now when I log in, it should take me to the home page. And it does. So that works really well. So now I'll click log out, which will give me a weird feedback because we haven't actually set this root up yet, but it will log me out. Okay, so if I go back to the home page now and refresh this, you'll see that in fact I am logged out. So we'll take care of log out in a minute. Let's get login working properly first. So I'll go back to the login screen. And this time I want to go back and make some additional feedback. When someone enters the wrong credentials, I'd really like them to get some kind of error message. And what I'm going to do is open my terminal and stop my application, make sure I'm in the right folder, and I am. I'm in the front end folder, which I called view-app. I'm going to install a nice little JavaScript library called Noti. And I've used this in other courses, and you may be familiar with it, but if not, it's dead simple to use. So to install it, I'll just type npm install Noti. And I'll put a link to the GitHub repository for this in the course resources for this lecture, so you can read the documentation at your leisure. But let's install it. There, it's installed, and we still have our vulnerabilities warning, but we'll deal with those before too long, so don't worry about that. Now that it's installed, here, back in login.view, I can import Noti and actually use it. And to do that, I just type import Noti, N-O-T-I-E, from, and then in single quotes, Noti. So now it's imported. And of course, we're not using it, so we'll have to do something. And what I want to do, when someone fails the login procedure, I want to display an error message. So that would take place, of course, down here, if response.error, in the final then clause from the fetch statement. So right now we're just console logging the error. Let's actually display an alert. And to do that using Noti, you just say noti.alert. Then opening parentheses and in curly brackets, we specify the kind of alert we want. And the type of alert I want, type, will be error, like that. Okay? And the message in the error, well, I get that as part of the payload. And that's the text for the Noti message. That comes from response.error.message. Okay? And we have some other options you can do, and I'll comment them out, but you can say things like, do I want this alert to stay? And I could set that to true, which means the alert won't go away until somebody clicks on it. And I can also specify things like position. You could put that, it defaults to the top, but I could say bottom, for example, like that, okay? I'm going to leave those commented out. Now, the only other change I have to make before I try this out is to go back to the public folder, open up index.html, and I need to paste in the style sheet for Noti, okay? So, right here in the head section, I'll just paste this in, and you can either go to the Noti homepage that's in the course resources for this lecture and copy it, or you can just type it in. Link rel equals style sheet, type equals text/CSS, and the href points to the CSS for Noti on a CDM, okay? unpackage.com/noti/dist/noti.min.css. Now, with the change here on index.html and those changes over here in login.view, now I can open my terminal and type npm run serve, wait for it to compile, go back to my web browser, reload the page to make sure it's current, and now I'll log in with bad credentials, me@here.com and anything for a password. And let's see what happens. Now, I got an undefined error, so that didn't work as expected, but I did get the Noti showing up. So let's figure out why that undefined is showing up. And it looks like it shouldn't be response.error.message, it should just be response.message. And that was a typo on my part. So it should recompile. Let's go back to our browser and try this again. So again, I'll refresh to make sure it's current, and I'll put in me@here.com and password. Invalid username and password. Okay, so that worked really well. So that makes our login process a little more intuitive for the users. When they log in successfully, they get redirected to the home page. When they have an error, they get an appropriate error message at the top of the screen. Okay, so that's logging in. In the next lecture, we'll get started on logging out and make that actually do something.